Hello and welcome to Soul Searchers of Spring Hill. I'm Ricky.
And I'm Brian.
And today we are in Spring Hill and we are at the Grace Episcopal Church and we're here with Father Martin.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Oh, it's our honor.
Well, we're very excited to get started on our tour of the church and hearing about the history that you have here.
Well, I'm glad to give it to you.
Thank you. A lot of people, I think, that have visited your church may have thought that this was the main entrance, but it's not. Yeah. And this is actually a new addition to the church. Can you tell us how that took place?
Yes, there was a structure here originally, and it was very small. There was a windstorm and a tree fell on it, and the result of that was that with the insurance money and some contributions, they built this larger building which has a kitchen, restrooms, an office, and a children's church room.
And Father, we're looking at this picture behind us, and can you tell me a little bit about it and what the significance is for this church?
Brian, this is a picture of Bishop Odie. He was the first bishop of the Diocese of Tennessee, and he was instrumental in starting many of the churches that were early in the Episcopal Church's entrance into the state.
So why don't we go ahead and start moving towards the original church structure, and we'll begin our tour, and you can share with us all of the beauty that holds there.
All right, we're glad to do it.
Okay.
All right, Father. The room we're standing in now, it's a 10 by 10 style room. What is the significance of the room, and what's its purpose?
Well, this is known as the sacristy, and this is where the people who are going to participate in the service put on their particular clothes. We call that vesting. Also in this room is where we store the various elements, such as the bread and the wine, which we use when we come to the part of the service known as the Eucharist or communion.
All right, we're back in the church now. Father Doc, when was this church built?
It was built during 1877 and then consecrated May 16, 1878 by Bishop Quintard, who was the bishop of the Diocese of Tennessee at that time.
So we're talking roughly 137 years old. Was the original purpose for this building to be a church?
Yes, it has always been here with the purpose of worshiping God.
Okay.
So we are in the main part of the church, and I do have my jacket on, but that's because we're here on a Saturday, and so it's a little bit cooler than as warm as it usually is in here. And one thing I notice immediately is, of course, all of the pretty stained glass windows. And unlike a lot of other churches that I've been in, there's a big circular window back here. Could you explain to us the purpose of that window? And you said you had a little bit of a story about that particular window too.
Yes, the round window are called ocular windows, and it's the idea of an eye, God looking in on the service. In this particular church, twice a year, the sun, as it makes its transit through the sky, will shine through in the morning, and there will actually be on the floor a red circle. Once, in the years I've been here, it actually focused on the altar and circled it. It was just beautiful.
So it kind of moves and its positioning according to where the sun is and how the sun is hitting it, correct?
Exactly. It goes from side to side.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's really interesting. And it's a beautiful, beautiful window. And that's a emblem of a dove.
Right. In the Episcopal faith tradition, symbols are very important. They guide our thoughts from our humanity to that which is eternal.
I was just looking at the ceiling, and the ceiling really caught my eye. Is there anything special about the ceiling and the way it's designed?
Ceilings here and in other Episcopal churches are made to look like the inside of a ship. It's the idea of safety and moving us from this world to the next.
So, Father Martin, we're now in a very prominent part of the church, which is towards the front where the altar and an organ is usually found. And of course, we found that here, but this is not your typical organ. It's certainly not one that I have ever seen in a church before. Being involved in music, it's always a favorite part of the church ceremony of mine. But like I said, this is definitely unique. So what can you tell us about this?
This organ was built by the Henry Pilcher and Sons Organ Factory in Louisville, Kentucky in 1884. So it's not quite as old as this particular building is. This is one of the few remaining Pilcher organs. It's a fully manual organ, which means that the original organ had no electricity associated with it. There was a large bellows back in the organ room, and when the organist was ready to play, she would pull one of the levers on the side, and it signaled the child that was from the orphanage it was time to pump. When the song was over, then she would push the signal button back in, and that would let the child know it's time for a rest.
And so how would they get back there? Was there a little doorway or something?
Yes, there's actually a little door on the side, and I had discovered that one Sunday morning when the pump, the actual electric pump, froze up. I had to go back there with a hammer and beat on it until it unfroze, and that's when I discovered the bellows were still there.
Oh, wow. That's great. And so your organist for the church plays this every Sunday, correct?
Yes, she is very talented and gets music out of that no one would ever expect to be able to get from an organ that's well over 100 years old.
Well, that's great. Well, we'll be sure to come and join you some Sundays so we can hear it.
Thank you.
Behind us here, what's the significance of this area right behind you?
In an Episcopal church, there is a division.
Okay.
This is known as the chancel area. It was separated from the main part where the people sat, which was called the nave. It came about that in the early days of Christianity in England, where there were monasteries, the monks would sit in this raised platform, and they did that in order to stay warm because there was no heat in those large stone structures. There was also a wall so that the people in the church couldn't see what was going on. And since the services were done in Latin, they had no clue what was being said. So in the service, there were times where there would be special events going on, and there were bells that were rung to let the people know it was time for them to do the sign of the cross.
Because they didn't know the language, all they could hear was the bells.
Right, exactly.
Okay. And as we're walking up here and looking at the altar area, what first comes out at you is the railing and the amount of detail put into this. Where did this come from?
This altar rail was originally carved from one tree found on the Ewell farm, which is close by.
So locally?
Yes, and it was made by a craftsman, one of the teachers at the orphanage right down Main Street here in Spring Hill.
Wow, that is amazing. And can we walk inside to the altar area?
Sure.
And again, as we walk in, it just blows my mind about how much detail is put into the actual altar and everything around it. Can you talk about the altar and you know where it came from and how long it's been here?
The altar was carved by one of the artisans up in Sewanee, Tennessee, the mountain going between this part of the state and Chattanooga. We think that the person that carved it was on the faculty at the University of the South there in Sewanee. You can see that there are grapes. Jesus used several analogies, and one of them had to do with grapes. He also used the words, "I am the bread of life." So that's there. And then on either side, you see the letters, Greek letters, Alpha and Omega, which represented the beginning and the end.
Okay, so we're almost done with our tour, but we're actually ending it in the beginning. Because this is considered the narthex of the church, which is technically the main entrance to the church of the original church building.
Right. The narthex was designed to be a place where you made a transition from the world to the church, and then from the church back to the world. And also, just in terms of weather, provides a little transition from the outside to the inside.
Right. And there's one other really important aspect of this entrance cove, which is this, once again, another beautiful stained glass window.
Yes.
And what can you tell us about that window?
The window was given by the Mitchum family in honor of the original founding family of Grace Episcopal Church. The Mitchums were here and still reside here in Spring Hill.
So, Father, I noticed that the front door is painted red. Is there a reason for that?
There are two reasons that have come down through history. The first has to do with, in ancient England, in the churches that were in the northern part, because the fog was so bad, they actually would paint the doors red so people could find them. The second reason has to do with the blood of Christ, and it represents a place of safety or sanctuary.
So let's take a walk on outside,
Okay,
out here to Spring Hill.
all right.